esta cuestión. Listo, chicos, súper. Entonces, de nuevo, ahí todos me pueden escuchar, ya estamos grabando bien. Listo, chicos, entonces, de nuevo, muchísimas gracias por su tiempo. Personalmente estoy bastante emocionado, sinceramente bastante feliz de poder tener esta oportunidad de hablar de un tema que pues personalmente me gusta mucho, pero que también eh, como que hemos intentado bastante lograr que se solape en el sentido positivo de la expresión con tantas otras cosas técnicas que nosotros hacemos y pues a las que finalmente nos hemos dedicado y nos dedicaremos en nuestra vida profesional. El punto de partida de todo esto es básicamente, yo diría que al menos dos cosas. Eh, Primero, un esfuerzo por resignificar lo que es la educación en el sentido más amplio, pero también por resignificar lo que implica enseñar una lengua extranjera, ¿cierto? Nos hacemos un poco esa pregunta de lo que realmente significa y de lo que se esperaría un poco de nosotros en ese sentido. Entonces, como encontrar nuevos horizontes de lo que significa ser un profesor de inglés y de pronto defendiendo un poco más esta idea de más allá de ser un profesor de inglés, ser un licenciado en lenguas, eso que significa. Y en segunda medida, hacernos estas preguntas constantes sobre eh, qué horizontes profesionales nosotros podemos tener en cuenta y cómo nosotros podemos estar en un ejercicio constante de mejora y de crecimiento profesional. Digamos que en términos generales, nosotros estamos viviendo, o sea, de alguna manera nos deberíamos sentir quizás privilegiados porque estamos viendo una de las transformaciones más importantes en la historia de la educación y seguramente de esto se empezará a escribir bastante, pero estamos viendo una transformación enorme en las que están sucediendo al menos dos cosas importantes también. Por un lado, hay transformaciones gigantes en términos del delivery de la educación, de cómo se entrega ese servicio educativo y en este caso, pues, en esencia por la mediación de plataformas tecnológicas. Y eso, a su vez, abre una gran pregunta que tiene que ver con lo que nosotros consideramos o lo que nosotros llamamos la educación formal, como cada vez más alternativas de educación eh, informal, pero más que informal, alternativa, pues se empiezan a posicionar con más y con más fuerza. Entonces, en ese panorama de todos estos cambios y demás, nosotros tenemos esta iniciativa, surgió esta iniciativa de ELT Innovation Observatory como un espacio en el que se hicieran, entre otras cosas, ese tipo de análisis de difusiones y de promociones, digamos. Y pues esta viene siendo como la segunda oportunidad que tenemos de compartir, de charlar, de aprender, eh, habiendo sido la primera, nuestro seminario de Design Thinking. Entonces, pues de verdad, estoy muy feliz de poder compartir este espacio con ustedes. Okay, so as we said, we agreed on the fact that this little crash course should be delivered in English. So that's what we are doing. So guys, last week we were talking about the structure of the course itself, basically emphasizing on the objective we had for this. And the objective was basically to provide you with an introduction to what project management is. So it's like by the end of this course, you would have a wider overview on what project management itself is and what being a project manager somehow means. So we also said that we would start today with the module number 1, which is what I try to call somehow the project approach. So I'll try, like with every single module, and that's something perhaps I didn't mention last week, I'll try to make it like 50-50, like the first session would be focused more on the concepts. I mean, as I've said before, like the rudimentary knowledge on the different matters and subjects we will be talking about. Just a little bit more theoretical, let's say, and open for discussion. And the second session of each one of the modules, we would focus more on the practice and actually doing things. So yes, this first module, which is today and the next Saturday, I decided to call it the project approach. And I did it because, and that's a little spoiler perhaps I gave you last week, being a manager for a project and being a manager in a company are two completely different things. And that's part of what we will try to discuss about today. Okay, so let's start with a project management overview. Let's say basically to know what project management is and what it is not. So just to start, and although this is a question that some of you should absolutely know, at least those of you who were in the practicum, I'd like to know who remembers or who knows what a project is. What's a project? Who wants to say something about that? You just need one person to have a say, and that's it.
An idea.
Sebastian, did you say something?
Yeah, I'm sorry. An idea for me at the beginning.
A project is an idea. Well, certainly yes. Okay, that's part of the definition, but we are missing several elements. So you guys should know a little bit more about that. So yeah, it's an idea, certainly yes, but we are missing more elements here.
It can be said that it's something that you start to develop. It involves many things like how to work in a team, but it's something that you develop, something that have many stages. And by the end of this project, you must have something that you need to show to be a result or a prototype.
Okay. If we somehow put together what Sebastian and Felipe said, we would find several elements of what a project actually is. So just to start, Sebastian mentioned that it is an idea, and then Felipe mentioned at least resources and time and products, something you got to show. So yes, that's part of it. But if we are to come up with a definition of what a project is, I'd say, well, that's not my definition. That's actually was taken from Horin, 2009. He says that a project is the work performed by an organization one time to produce a unique outcome. So these two things here in bold are super, super, super important. We really need to remember these two things because, well, if we say that a project is the work, I mean, just saying work at least implies that there is a number of activities. So a project has several actions, several activities, and that's something we can, understand pretty well. But then when we say that it's performed by an organization, one time it means something. And that's something we're going to explore in a moment, what we mean by one time. And then we say also that it's done in order to produce a unique outcome. So those two expressions are truly, truly important. And we are going to go to discuss them and analyze them in detail. So this is a comparison. And this is what I said. It's absolutely different to be a manager in a project versus a manager in a company as a whole. So this would be perhaps the contrast between a project and the operations of a company, you see? So just to start, when we work in a project, we say that it's one time and is unique, right? What it means is that we do one project. I mean, every single project is conducted just once, you say, and there might be several editions of the same project in different years, but every single project is different, you see? So every single project is completely different and it's done one time. So you never do the same project twice. It's simply impossible. Let's remember that we've said so many times, and that's part of a definition that we have of what applied research is. We say that to start a project, we need to identify a need of real people, and then we create a solution for that need. And that could be iterative. We can, work on the same solution and improve it and so on, but still, that's something we do just one time. We don't do the same project several times. And also, we say that the project is unique. It means that if you do a project, let's say you create a course to teach English for specific purposes here in Bogota, and then you have to do somehow the same in Cali, audiences are somehow different. The context is somehow different. So the two projects might be similar, but they will never be the same project. It's simply impossible just by the fact that you have two different audiences. That would change everything. So that's something we need to also keep in mind. Every single project is unique. You can never somehow reproduce the same project in a different context, assuming that it's possible. Absolutely not. I mean, you can base this new operation, this new project on the experience you had before. Absolutely yes, but the projects will be different. So for example, building a new house, developing an app, creating a new radio commercial, creating a course. You see, those are things that we do just one time. If you build a house, you build it and that's it. And you can build a very similar house, but still they won't be the same house, of course. So this is different. So every time we do a project, we do it one time, is unique. But in the case of operations, and that's when you are working in any company, if we think about processes like this, processing customer orders or performing accounts receivable and accounts payable activities, or executing daily manufacturing orders, like for example, a typical factory, for example, a factory that is producing certain product over and over and over and over. In this case, we're talking about operations, and that's ongoing and repetitive. You see, so it's different based on that. So if you work in a company, for example, I don't know, sometimes even when we work in a school, it might be a little bit, it might have, elements of both, but sometimes schools or universities tend to be a little bit more similar to operations, you see, because like, for example, if you are working for a university, you are assigned a certain number of courses, you have to teach those courses, you finish the courses, and then you start again. But you see, it's like, that's something that is somehow repetitive. In the case of projects, that's not the case. In the case of a project, we have a specific objective and we have a specific team assigned to that project. And as I said, is something that happens one time, something which is unique. So those are perhaps some of the most obvious differences between projects and operations. This is something that they also call gerencia funcional. That's the word I use, and you can actually call it like that, functional management. So functional management has to do more with this other thing, like ongoing and repetitive activities. So somehow the work is more stable, you see, which is absolutely different in the case of projects. This is a chart that I took from my source that I'll be sharing with you as well. So here we can compare at least the key similarities, the purpose, the time, outcome, people, and the authority of the manager. If we compare project management versus functional management. Remember, when we say project management, we're talking about, well, gestión o administración de proyectos, right? Which is the topic of this course. And when we talk about operations or gerencia funcional, es eso que nosotros entendemos como el típico gerente, like de un banco, for example, right? So key similarities, both are planned, executed, controlled, performed by people, resource constrained, you see? So it's something that in both cases you have to plan, you have to execute, which is like to make things happen. You have to control the work, right? People work in both cases, of course, and what you do is limited by the resources you have. So it's limited by the money or by the people or the talents your team has. So regarding these elements, they are similar, let's say. But regarding the purpose, it's very, very different. If you work for a project, you want to attain objectives and terminate. So it's like, working for a project implies that you want to complete and to close the project. You don't want just to continue there forever. I mean, that's not the way it works. So that's a huge difference. And in the case of functional management or the operations, we want to sustain the organization. So you work there not just for one project, but you work in order to keep the organization going. So it's a little bit different. Regarding time, well, projects are temporary and they have very accurate and specific beginning and end points. So every single project has a start and an end, right? In the case of operations, they are ongoing, right? So the companies, of course, they start somewhere, but you don't know exactly when companies are going to shut down, for instance. You just assume that the company has to continue somehow. So it's different. Outcome, in the case of projects, is a unique product, service, or result. So in the case of a project you produce, and that's something that, for instance, Felipe mentioned before, you get some results. I mean, there are some results you know that you need to produce, and that's what you work for. But in the case of the operations, you may sell or produce different kinds of products, services, or results. So it's like you do lots of different things, and throughout time, perhaps you might even create new products or results. But in the case of projects, that's not how it goes. You have a specific product, service, or result, and you work to accomplish that. People, this is also super, super important to highlight. There is a huge difference when we talk about the case of people. First of all, in the case of projects, the teams are dynamic, temporary. Also, they are formed specifically to meet the project needs. Sometimes the organizational structure is not absolutely aligned. So it's like there might be different roles and people can interact in so many different ways. But in the case of operations, the people, I mean, the people or the functional teams are aligned with the organizational structure. So just to give you an example, for example, in the case of what we do in the British Council, there were these two projects, Eco Radio del Putumayo and Eco Radio del Meta. So the British Council have never taught a course about bird watching, I'm sorry. ¿Sí? Como ver pajaritos en la naturaleza. I mean, that's not something the British Council does, you see? So we don't have an expert on birds in the British Council, you see? That there is no such position. But for that project, we had to hire someone who had that specific knowledge. So when we are working on projects, we need to be super flexible. And quite often, we would have to look for people who know very specific things. And perhaps those are talents that we don't have in our company. So this is also very, very important. In the case of operations, the teams and the jobs that we have tend to be very stable. So it's like we always have the same people, but when we are working with projects, we may have lots of different people. And this is something that I would also like to highlight, given the fact that in the case of projects, we are dynamic, basically. We need to be ready to interact with people from lots of different backgrounds. So this is something I've said before. We need to be very careful with the way we communicate and we relate with others, right? So it's like we are not so academic, because sometimes we might have to talk to people who have a completely different background. And last but not least, this is also something I don't find that accurate, but I kind of like it. They say the authority of the manager or the authority of the project manager, let's say. In the case of projects, it varies by organizational structure. So it can be very, very different. So that's why we said like, claro, el gerente. But when we are talking about a project, it's not exactly like that. The structure is way more flexible. So for example, in the project I'm working in this very moment, we are working in a project with the Ministry of Education. So there is a director, which is like the head of the whole thing. There is another person, which is the head of English, which is a sub-director, let's say. Then there are a couple of senior managers, and then there are two project managers more, and then there are some academic consultants and technical leads. So the structures can be very flexible. So there is no standard structure for a project. We could somehow say that the only, let's say, three standard positions in a project would be the project manager, a technical lead or content expert, and then a administrative or logistics assistant. I mean, those are the three standard positions, but it's not, I mean, that's something that can change a lot from project to project. In the case of operations, but that's another thing. They say that sometimes the authority of the project manager is minimal, and sometimes there is no direct line authority. So yes, somehow the project manager is not like a boss, it's more like a leader. It's a little bit different. But in the case of operations, of course, we know like the manager of a bank is something very formal, and there is a direct line authority. So those are also very, very important difference. I'd like to make a little pause here and ask you guys if you have any comment or question regarding what we've said so far, just to know. Everything's okay somehow?
Seems to be clear, yeah.
Yes.
Seems to be clear. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So guys, this is super, super, super important to keep in mind. Projects are less predictable than operations. So projects are less predictable and are constantly impacted by the dynamic, uncertain nature of most organizational environments. Projects are less predictable. So for example, in the case of this project with the Ministry of Education, we worked for at least let's say like 2 months on the proposal. We were working on that proposal and making lots of different changes, and then boom, COVID-19 shows up. You see? So it's like you need to change pretty much everything. You need to make lots of really crazy changes in order to accomplish the goal you had initially. You see? In other cases, in the case of operations in general terms, it's like you have your operation like the university, for example, and they might say, you know what, we're gonna stop. And then we will start classes again next year. That's something they could do. It would only depend on their finance, let's say, but they could somehow do that. It would be something we could understand. But in the case of a project, you cannot do that. If you say, no, we don't have conditions, let's stop, well, there is no project then, because you cannot sign the project and then say, okay, we will do it, but the next year, hell no, that's not a possibility. So that's a huge difference. Projects are less predictable. Now, managing a project. So far, like what we've said previously, essentially what we wanted to say is that projects are a series of activities that we do in order to accomplish a goal. But we also said that projects are unique and they happen just one time, right? So that's essentially what we said. But when we say managing projects, what do we actually mean by managing projects? That's something very important. So now I'd like to change the dynamics of the whole thing a little bit. So we're gonna try this, super cool tool Zoom has, which is one of my favorites, which is the breakout rooms. If it works, damn it. Let me just try that. So basically what I'd like you guys to do now is to answer that question. What do we mean when we say managing projects? What is to manage a project? That's something I'd like you to come up with, like some sort of an idea about that. So we're gonna use this cool tool, the breakout rooms. We're gonna make 3 groups, actually just 2 groups of 4 people. So we're gonna take around, let's say, pretty much like 4 minutes more or less discussion. So you guys come up with an idea. So your task as a group is to say, this is what it means. So you have to agree a definition on what managing a project is. Okay, guys? So I'd like to know if you understand the instruction.
Yes.
You guys get it? Okay, excellent.
Okay,
so let's, yes? Okay, cool. So I'm gonna just do that and I will jump from room to room, just like to know what's going on. Okay, guys. So I just like you to put out to put your definitions together, so we know what each one of the groups were saying. So who wants to start? Who wants to share, their insights and stuff? Nobody?
I would like to start.
Like you want or you
Yes.
don't want?
I
Okay,
would
Daniel,
like
please.
Okay, so managing a project is being aware of the components that the project has, and also it's being able of assign some tasks to certain people according to their talents in order to let's say work on those components so the project can be achievable.
Yeah, something
Okay,
important there. I would like to add something that is that we should be focused on give solutions. That is like the last part that I would like to add. According what Daniel says, so it's like that those components and also focus on giving a solution.
Okay, great. Yes, so definitely you're mentioning two very important aspects. I'd start by highlighting what Miguel says. So it's like you need to address a real need. So that means that you have a goal, you have an objective to accomplish, but and also you have to be aware of that objective, let's say, in order to know how to somehow assign activities, duties, responsibilities to the team that perhaps was assigned to that project. So yeah, there's no doubt those are two clear elements of what a project is. Cool. Thank you very much. What about, yeah, Paula is going to say something, right?
Yeah, sorry. I just want to add that also it is focused on different deliberate practices that become flexible according to the context and according to all the steps that must be followed to achieve those specific goals
Yes,
to get
absolutely.
the
Yes.
solution. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something we said before. As projects are not predictable, being flexible to adapt perhaps those decisions you've made before is a really important. Really important. Thank you very much. So now this other group, you guys, what you guys have to say?
We kind of came up with that it is like a process where you manage resources, you assess, and you take decisions in order to complete the life cycle of an idea that probably would be the project.
Okay, absolutely. Yes, you're mentioning really important elements as well. You're talking about the life cycle of a project. And that expression, life cycle, addresses something we said before, and that's the fact that the projects are done one time and they are unique. So the life cycle has to do a lot with that. And that's something as you said, that you have to control and then that you assess as well, which is one of the stages of a project. Yeah, absolutely, yes. So guys, let's see what we've got here to say about that. So, well, come on. So, let me just double check. Okay. So, what we mean by managing a project. So by managing a project, we say that we mean the process of managing the competing demands and trade-offs between the desired results of a project and the natural constraints of the project. So it has to do with somehow making it possible, making it somehow real. So you somehow connect the desired results, what you expect to achieve with the project. You have to compare that with the limitations that you may have. So, and this is something I'll be discussing in a moment, which is also very important. The scope, performance, and quality, which are three important elements of the project. The scope, what you want to achieve, which is the goal, it's essentially. The performance, which is the degree in which you actually achieve those goals, if you do it completely or not, and the quality, which has to do with expectations or what your partner or client expects you to do, and the natural constraints of a project, which are essentially two, the time and cost. So it's basically all about knowing how those elements interact, how you do what you need to do, and how you use what you have in order to get there. You see, so that's one of the things we mean by managing a project. We also mean the process of leading a team, which is something you've said before. Leading a team that has never worked together before to accomplish something that has never been done before in a given amount of time with a limited amount of money. And that sounds crazy hard, as you can see here, because when you are working on a project, quite often it happens that these people don't know each other. You say that's something we know that's going to happen. Perhaps people don't know each other, and you get these people together to accomplish something that somehow has never been done before. So even if the projects are similar and everything, remember projects are different. So the knowledge that we have on previous experiences, of course, is going to be important, but still, this new project is new itself. So this could be a more summarized definition on what project management is. So this could be the definition that we all somehow should agree on. So managing a project or project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet project requirements. So it's all about using the knowledge, the skills, the tools, and techniques we have in order to meet project requirements, which is essentially the scope or the goal that we have. This institute, guys, super important. The Project Management Institute, the PMI, they are the producers of something which is called the PMBOK, which is almost like the, I don't know, well, the most important book out there on project management. And this institute actually gives certifications. So if you are like more interested in this thing of what project management is, and someday you say, you know what, I'm gonna get into project management and I'd like to have a official certification. Let's say that the PMI certification is like the top IELTS of project management, let's say. There is like an equivalent of IELTS, let's say, in the world of project management, which is the different certifications the Project Management Institute offers, which are super, super hard. But having that certification, it's really important in this, world of the project management. So now, the project process, and this is something you guys were also talking about. You were talking about the process. You were talking about the project as a process itself. So we could say, and this is according to the PMI, to the Project Management Institute, although if you look for other sources or in other, sources, you might find slightly different definitions, but essentially every single project has at least this 5 different stages. This is quite a standard, actually. So the first stage of a project is the initiating phase of a project that has to do with the preliminary planning of, as they call it, the kicking off. So this is the very first thing we do. So it implies defining scopes, negotiating with your stakeholder. Basically, it's a process in which we visualize what we want to do. We think about the things that we want to achieve. It's a discussion process in which we think about what we want to achieve. If it's a project in which it's a contract, nor not an agreement, but a contract that you are something that you are being paid off to do, it includes that. It's basically this preliminary planning in which we, for instance, negotiate the scope, the time, the money which is going to be involved. Is this negotiating process, let's say. Then the second stage of the project, which is, I don't know how to call it, but it's somehow one of the toughest, I'd say, is the planning, which is actually to develop the plan, to create a proposal for your project. And this is a process which is sometimes, to be honest, sometimes I find it boring because it takes lots of energy and lots of work to finally find what you want. And it depends a lot on communication with the stakeholder. So perhaps the stakeholder wants something, you want something slightly different. So that's really hard. Yes, Paula? Paula, you were gonna say something?
Yes, sorry, I was. I have a question. In terms of initiating and planning, which one could be called as an archetype? I don't know if it's the appropriate word, but according to the things that you were mentioning, is the planning process an archetype, or is the initiating one?
So the important thing is to define what's the product of each one of the phases. So when you finish the initiating phase, basically, you know what the scope, the time, and the cost will be. And actually those 3 elements. It's like, you know that, for example, you are going to deliver a training in English for specific purposes to 500 people in Medellin. It's like, you know that, the scope. Then you also know the time. You have information about the time, how long you got to develop that idea. And you get information about the cost, how much money you need for that. But that's the product of the first phase. We don't have a proposal. We don't have a strategy here. You see? It's like, you know where you want to go, but you have no idea how to get there. We could say that. That would be the result of the initiating phase. It's like, you know what you want to do, you know what you have to do, but you don't have a strategy. You don't know how to get there. You just know that you, as I said, you have to teach English to 500 people, you have 6 months, and you have 200 million pesos. That's all you've got, but you have no strategy. In the case of the planning, you have a prototype. You may have a prototype or like a strategy of what you want to achieve, and that's different. Because when you finish the second phase, you have a strategy. You know how you're gonna get there. And I said that it was a little bit like more exhausting because it takes a lot of time, because the stakeholder might say, okay, I get it, but what if we do this? What if we do that? So they will comment your strategy. So the result, the product of the planning stage is the proposal. You see, the proposal which is accepted by the stakeholder. But in the by the end of the first stage, you don't have a proposal. You just have information about what you need to do. You see? I don't know if I answered the question actually somehow. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So in the third stage is the one I like the most, which is actually doing things. So that's executing. So that implies the delivery of the project. So that means that you have to open the calls to recruit the team, to hire people, to train people to do things, and then you start doing the activities. You start to buy the things you need. So it's when the project is actually born, when you see movement, when you see people working. So that's one of the things I like the most. The fourth stage is controlling, although these two stages, executing and controlling, they happen all together. So it's not like you execute and then you control. Well, you start executing first, that is for sure, but you control almost immediately. So it's like you execute and control at the same time. So it has to do with keeping on course. So it's like you have to control your calendar, you have to control your budget, of course, you have to control your team's performance. So it's like you measure what's happening in order to achieve, well, your objective. In the case of the teams, you can, for instance, hold performance meetings. So you agree with your team that you're gonna have, for example, a weekly catch up to know how things are going, to ask them how they are. And then you might also have one-on-one meetings every couple of weeks, let's say, just to see how each member of your team is doing. And so that has to do with controlling the team. And it's not controlling like pushing them and making them do what you want, but it's knowing how they are and keep them on board and on course. You also control the budget. So there are different exercises, and that's something I'll show you, which is the cash flow and the forecast, for example, just to mention a couple of exercises. In the case of the forecast, we project the expenditure, so how much money we're going to spend in each one of the months. That's something we have to plan, and that's the forecast. And also the cash flow, which is when money is going to enter and when money is going to go out of from our accounts. You see, so those are exercises we need to do, because also depending on the organization, we may have financial resources ourselves to start a project, or we may need our stakeholder to give us money to start working, right? And the last phase, which is also very important, super important, is the closing of a project, and that has to do with the client acceptance. So there is a document they quite often in the public sector they call acta de liquidación. So the acta de liquidación is a document that we sign in which we say the project was conducted and the goals were achieved. Thank you very much. You say, so that document is also very important. In that, for the closing of a project, we need to basically report every single detail, and we should also try to evaluate or to assess the project and basically evaluate it and how it happened. Then we have this chart which essentially is like a summary from the previous graphic I showed you. So it has more information on the same thing, and that's based on the description per the PM book. This book is the book from the Project Management Institute I told you about. It's something you can download if you just look for that book, although it's super specialized, so we need to read it little by little. So as I said, initiating, which is authorizing the project or phase, planning, defining and refining objectives of the project and selecting the best course of action, executing, coordinating the people and resources to implement the plan, controlling, ensuring project objectives are met by monitoring and measuring progress regularly to identify variances and so on, and closing, formalizing acceptance of project or phase and bringing to an orderly end. You see, so those are essentially the stages of a project. So you guys, with your definitions, to address several things, because you were talking about outcomes, results, teams. So you were right. As you can see, you were right. But we also should say that there are more phases. And this is something we need to keep in mind, that there are at least these 5 different phases when talking about the development of a project. This is also something very important, guys, which is the knowledge areas, So Paula said that when we are working on a project, we need to have knowledge or to know about different things. And that's absolutely true. We as project managers need to be aware of different kinds of things, of different areas, different, let's say, topics or elements. So, for example, in the first one, project integration management. So it's your capacity to integrate all the different areas to ensure that the communication goes well, for example, and that the processes are done properly. So, for example, if you need a consultant to deliver a course, a person who is going to teach a course, you need to have some academic knowledge to know what kind of people you need, but you also need to know about contracts, for example. You need to know that they cannot work if they don't have a contract, the kinds of documents they have to bring. So that's what it means, this project integration management. The second one, project scope management, which has to do with knowing that the project includes all the activities we need to do. So if the objective of your course is of your project is to design a course, you need to know all the things you need to know to achieve that. You see? So if you want to train 200 people in the use of English for specific purposes, you need to make a list of the things that you need to know how to do, and all the elements that you need to keep in mind if you want to get there. Project time management, which has to do with the way you manage time and the way in which you connect activities and the different strategies you use to make the most of your time. And that's perhaps a topic that Felipe is going to love, as he's so into this topic of using time wisely and stuff. This is very important. Different techniques and strategies that we use to manage time. Project cost management as well. So we need to know about finance. We need to know about how to use money, for example, and the different processes that we need to keep in mind to estimate the cost, like quotations, for example, cotizaciones and that sort of stuff. You see. So we need to know how much we could pay a person, right? I mean, those are somehow numbers and figures that you need to keep in the back of your mind all the time, for example. So how to estimate cost, for example. Project quality management as well. So you know that the project that you're developing satisfies the needs of the audience. So that's something that Miguel previously said when he said that there should be a clear need or problem that we want to address. Okay, that has to do with quality. So that's what quality evaluates. It evaluates if what you are doing addresses the needs or the need that you want to somehow solve, let's say. So that's quality. Then the project human resources management. So you need to know how to talk to people and how to integrate the team and how to deal with those matters. So that's another, as you can say, a completely different set of skills. And the last part, which is the project communications management, that has to do with the way you communicate what you're doing. This is one of the very first things I learned when I started working for the British Council, and that's something I've mentioned several times. And it is that one, he's the current leader of the bilingualism program in the Ministerio de Educación, Carlos Amaya, that's his name. He said, uno tiene que saber cacarear los huevos, when talking about the projects. So it's like it's not about just doing a great job. It's also about how you tell the world that you are doing a good job. You see? So if you do a great, for instance, if you develop an excellent, really cool application, but you don't have a communication strategy, nobody will ever know. You see? So that's also very important. So far we got 7 different areas. So the first one that has to do with integration, how you coordinate. It's your ability to be a coordinator as a project manager, let's say. And these areas, guys, are the areas that we need to develop as project managers. That's what I meant. So we need to learn to coordinate. That's number 1. Then number 2, we need to know what we need to achieve what we want. If you are going to design a course, if you are going to design a training program, whatever you want to do, you need to have this technical knowledge that tells you what you need to do that. So if you want to design a course, you need to know about instructional design, for example. Project time management, that has to do with your ability, your skills to manage time wisely. How do you connect activities? How do you do things so you use time the best way you can? Costs, that has to do with money management. How would you manage the money? How would you estimate cost wisely? How would you spend the money in an intelligent way? Let's say quality, that has to do with the standards. So you know, I mean, the project has good quality if it solves the problem that you wanted to solve, as Miguel said. Project human resources. So how to deal with people, how to motivate people, how to keep people engaged, how to treat people fairly, for example. And the last part, communications. So you see, it's a very complex set of skills. And we got 2 skills more. Number 8, which is the risk management. So it's almost like our capacity to foresee the future, our capacity to see the future and be prepared for whatever happens. So that's concerned with identifying, analyzing, and responding to risks. So project managers need to be able to see the future somehow. They need to be able to anticipate possible problems and be prepared for that. And the last part, the last skill, which is project procurement management. Procurement has to do with all the legal processes that we need to follow in order to acquire goods or services. So if you need to hire a team, if you need to buy some devices for your project, you need to follow the rules. You see, you need to know the rules of your company, the rules of the country in which you are working, and to know how to do things. When you are working with public stakeholders, if you develop a project for a local education authority or Secretaría de Educación or for a ministry, you should always remember that it might happen that when you finish the project, the Fiscalía, Contraloría, or Procuraduría could show up and they might say, okay, let me check this project. And this is something they would see, the procurement. That's one of the most important things for them, to say like, okay, in this project, you bought some books at this price, why, you see? And how did you buy those books? And what was the process you followed? So we always have this kinds of assessments from our stakeholder or from external entities like secretarías, like procuradurías, fiscalía, blah, 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 and also from our own organization. So as you can see, guys, we got lots of different skills. And it's a matter of, let's say, reflection to always think about what of those skills perhaps we need to work on the most. For example, if you ask me, I would say that one of the skills that I need to work on the most is the number 4, cost management. That's something I need to work the most. And for perhaps project risk management. Those are the 2 skills in which I personally believe that I need to work the most. Remember, these standards that we are checking here are taken from the PMBOK, which is developed by the Project Management Institute. So this is quite a standard, actually. And if we ask ourselves about the skills that a project manager should have, well, at least these 9 sets of skills. Okay, guys, I'd like to know if you got any comment, question, I don't know, complaint whatsoever. Nothing? I know it's lots of information, of course, but, you know, This is just the start anyways. That's why it's called a crash course, because we're gonna crash somehow.
I have a question.
That part.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Who's gonna?
Project risk management is some related with how I made a forecast from things that can change my project or my vision. Or
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. For instance, I'm going to show you a very clear example. If you are working, let's say you are developing a project for the Ministry of Education. One risk, which is always a risk, is the strikes. You see, los paros. So you have a project for 10 months with public schools. You need to keep in mind that there might be a strike, and then you need to think about actions. This is something we will go in detail, actually, and we will try to cover most of these sets of skills. But talking about risk management, there is something very basic, let's say, which is this tool they call risk management matrix, or like matriz de gestión de riesgos. So it's like you have to do at least 3 things to identify the risk, to identify the risk, the likelihood, and the actions. So this could happen. For instance, there might be strikes in the country. Likelihood, 50%, 60%, I don't know. Actions or mitigation actions, you say, if there is a strike, I will do this, you say. But as I said, this is the capacity the project manager has of anticipating possible problems, anticipating the likelihood of those problems, like the probability, and thinking about possible actions if such a thing happens.
Like pandemics.
For example, that was impossible to anticipate, to be honest. But anyways, we are thinking about mitigation actions. That's something we had to communicate the ministry this week, for example. And still, I don't trust my mitigation actions that much because I'm depending on lots of different things to happen. But anyways.
Okay.
For that chart. Okay.
Any other comment? I think Daniel wanted to say something, perhaps, or Wilfer. I don't know.
Yes, I would like to ask just really quick. With this project approach, well, we can see that this mindset invite us to be flexible during the whole process. But I was wondering how flexible could be, because if it's flexible, so that means that there's room for mistakes, or how is that part handled? Because I was thinking also about my thesis project. So at the end of the project, I was able to identify as a research that I was thinking from the beginning was not exactly the best solution for that problem that I identified. So how does it work in this area?
Okay, Daniel, thank you. I mean, that's actually a really, really, really good question. It depends on one single thing, and that's what they call, I don't know if in English they call it a project document, but we here in Colombia call it Minuta del Convenio or Minuta del Proyecto. And that document sets the standards of what you have to achieve. So yes, perhaps you might take a little bit more to do certain activity, or certain activity might take a little bit more money, but the Minuta, or that document, clearly says what you have to accomplish, you see? So that's the minimum. So you might say, for example, okay, for example, I will develop this course. I mean, I will implement a course for 200 students, right? But I had to take 2 weeks more. Perhaps the stakeholder would say, okay, 2 weeks more, no big deal, as long as you accomplish the scope of the project. You see, you cannot say, for instance, I couldn't deliver the course for 200, but we did it with 150, but it was a great course. I'm sorry, that's not the scope of a project. So you need to warranty that there are some minimum standards. So we need to be flexible to adapt to situations, yes, but since you start, and that's something that happens right here, when you finish the planning stage, you have this minuta, or this document that clearly states what your responsibilities are. So as long as you accomplish those responsibilities, no big deal. So I'm gonna explain this little part in Spanish because this is super local Colombian law, so just to make it super clear. Listo. Cuando ustedes empiezan el proyecto, tienen la minuta del convenio o la minuta del proyecto, ¿sí? Y ese documento dice, tiene una lista literal de las obligaciones de las partes y de los productos que se van a hacer. Una lista así tal cual, como lo que hicimos en la práctica, pero mucho más psycho, porque es súper detallada, ¿sí? De literalmente cada cosa que usted tiene que hacer. Cuando la dirección de ambas empresas o de ambas organizaciones firma eso, acepta que ese es el alcance y que son los entregables. Y de ahí en adelante, cuando empezamos con la ejecución, pueden pasar cosas, ¿sí? Que es que algo valga un poquito más, que algo valga un poquito menos, no importa. Eso puede, o sea, sí importa, pero eso es normal. O que los tiempos como que varían un poco. Pero usted sabe que desde el principio tiene que cumplir con eso. Hay flexibilidad hasta ese punto. Si usted no cumple con algo de la minuta, empieza a haber un problema, ¿cierto? Porque ya usted está cayendo en un incumplimiento de una obligación contractual. Entonces, si es imposible salirse de ese incumplimiento, pues lo que nos va a pasar a nosotros con la de la pandemia, si es que ya no hay posibilidad, hay dos instancias. Una, que son los comités de los proyectos, los comités mensuales, que son unas reuniones mensuales dentro de las cuales este comité, que es una junta de personas de ambas organizaciones, tiene unas potestades y desde el comité se pueden acordar ciertas cosas. Entonces, sobre la flexibilidad, que es que el desarrollo del curso no me valió 6 millones, sino que me valió 5, entonces me quedó 1 millón y me gustaría usar este millón en compra de material. Usted tiene que llevar esa consulta al comité y el comité puede decir, sí, hagámoslo, y queda dentro del acta aprobado ese movimiento de recursos. Entonces ahí fuimos flexibles, ¿sí? Pero fuimos flexibles porque igual usted cumplió con que iba a hacer el curso, ¿sí? No fue como, me salió más barato porque hice la mitad. No, me salió más barato porque lo negocié, yo qué sé. Entonces ahí hay flexibilidad. Si definitivamente no se puede hacer, ¿sí? Como que usted sabe que no termina y tiene una propuesta diferente, ya ni siquiera el comité tiene esa competencia y es algo que se debe elevar a nivel directivo, pero eso ya es más difícil. O sea, lo ideal es, o sea, se tiene que elevar a nivel directivo y tiene que haber modificaciones contractuales. O sea, la modificación de la minuta. Y eso uno como gerente de proyectos nunca quiere que pase eso. O sea, si eso pasa es porque ya no hay otra. Uno siempre va a evitar eso. O sea, uno lo más lejos que quiere llegar es a una aprobación del comité. Okay, so that's what I mean by flexibility. We are flexible regarding the way we use money, time, and stuff. But since the very beginning, when we finish the second phase, we know what we have to do. And there is certainly no flexibility whatsoever regarding those things. So I hope I somehow sort of answered the question, right? Thank you, cool. Okay, Paula, tell us.
Yeah, I was wondering also about the budget of the project. So what happened when you have covered all the responsibilities and all the things that you have to, but there is extra budget, I don't know, like there is an amount of money that, okay,
yes,
you didn't
have already finished the things, but
yes. Uh-huh.
So
thank you very much for that question. Yeah, actually, thank you very much for that question. I mean, those two questions were excellent, as if we had rehearsed them previously, to be honest, because those are very accurate questions. So normally in our life, if we have, let's say, I don't know, we have let's say 2 million pesos to spend on a trip and we spend less, that's fantastic, right? That's super cool. Like we didn't spend 2 million, but just 1 million. We are super happy. That's really good news. In the case of a project, that's never good news. You should never need more money nor have extra money because that's a planning problem. If you say no, like for instance, it was a 1,000 million pesos project, but I spent 30% less on the project because I'm a great manager. Actually, no, your planning sucks, basically. That's what it means, you see? Because what it means is, for example, you requested let's say 1,000 million pesos for your project in January, let's say. You said, I need 1,000 million pesos. And they assign you that budget for the project. And then that's in January. Then by November, you said, you know what? I got 300 million pesos on the account. I won't need it. You're welcome. They would say, I hate you because they perhaps needed that money for a different project. So if you are assigned a budget, you need to spend that money during the whole year. You need to spend all the money. So to answer Paula's question, if that happens, once again, remember that's one of the skills of the project manager: project cost management. So that's something we call, I'm so sorry, I don't remember the word in English, but we call it optimizaciones o eficiencias in Spanish. I don't remember how to call it in English. I will do the homework, I swear. So you need to identify those optimizaciones or eficiencias as soon as possible. So for example, in our project, we've been working just like for 3 weeks, and I know I got lots of optimizaciones, for instance. I know it right now. So as soon as you identify those optimizaciones, which is something that cannot happen at the end of the project because they will kill you, you need to identify them as soon as possible. Once you identify them, you need to present that in the committee. You have to say, look, we have this money.
Teacher.
Because we had to hire teachers in August, and we hired them in September. So we have the salary of 1 month. So we have extra money. So that's the first thing we say. We do. We say, cantar las optimizaciones. Once we do that, we have to present a plan. So we say, for instance, I have 10 million extra in the account. And my suggestion would be to assign those resources to this other activity. And that plan has to make sense. So for instance, as we couldn't pay the teachers because they were not hired, I am suggesting to use this money in this event that we will have at the end, buying some materials for students, blah, 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 blah. And then the committee would say, okay, let's do that. And they approve it. And what we do is that we move that money from one space to the other. But it's possible, you see? So it's like, if you don't spend the money in the activities that you originally planned, you need to present a plan so they accept changing that. So you assign that money to a different activity, but you have to spend it in the same project. You see? So you have to invest the money in the project itself. So I don't know if it was clear.
Yes, I don't want just to ask you, how do you say rubro in English?
Give me 1 second. Yes, would you please give me 1 second? I have a problem with my microphone.
Sounds weird.
Seriously.
Don't worry.
Yeah, it just got unplugged. Hello?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's perfect. Mm-hmm.
So what did you say?
How do you say rubro? Those changes you were talking about, those changes in terms of rubros that you have at the beginning of any project, right? And they are just moving money from one place to another by, if as far as I understood, presenting some specific actions that you're going to do with that amount of money, right?
Exactly. That's basically what I say. The way they call it, they quite often call it line item. The line item could be the rubro. So yes, it's like you spend the money from one line item in a different line item. That's possible to do, as long as the committee accepts you do that. Give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second. I need to answer a message from my mother. Okay. So yes, that's essentially my answer to that question. So well, can you just give me 1 second? I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on here. So did you guys have any other additional question, perhaps? No? Okay. Great.
Yes, I have another one, sorry. In terms of communications, those are like, I don't know how to explain it.
Uh-huh.
Like the summary of all the things that you were doing in terms of assessment, feedback, and like the final report, right?
Yes.
And what's the
Like the-
difference between communications and the procurements?
okay.
I know that, yeah, I got a confusion in terms of those two.
Yeah, those two are
terms.
very different. In the case of communications, we are talking about communication. So it's like how you tell the world about the project. So for instance, if you got any sort of, as you can see here, it says communication plan. So it has to do with the way, for example, that you are going to send communications to your stakeholder, when you are having meetings, for example, and when you're having presentations, but also what kinds of things are you going to tell the world, like on social media and so on. So it's the kind of information that you share and with whom you share it and by what kind of channels you do that. You see? So it's like you need to know who needs to know what, basically. And you have a, I mean, transmedia isn't a strategy, so you could use that strategy to communicate, of course. Yeah. So yeah, it's, I mean, communications management has to do with identifying who knows to know what and how, basically. So it's like what I am telling to whom and what kind of channel I will use to communicate that. We could say basically that is the communications management part. And in the case of procurement, it has to do with somehow the legal procedures to acquire goods and services. So if you know that for your project, you need to hire 20 people, there is a protocol in the company. So every single organization has a protocol for that. So it's like a series of steps that you need to follow. If you want to buy computers because you need them for your project, there is a process. So it's like you need to know the processes, those administrative processes that you need to follow for your project, and also to accomplish legal regulations, for example. You say that's basically it. So procurement has to do with that. They call it in Spanish, let me think, como departamento de adquisiciones o algo así. So it's this department that is concerned with how you buy goods and buy services for your projects. Okay, guys, so we just got to the place where we always get. So that has to do with a concept that I've used so many times and that you might be a little bit fed up with, and that has to do with dromology, the freaking science of and logic of speed, right? So what am I saying this? Basically, because, and this is something we see these days, how the world is changing dramatically, how things are changing every single day. And one of the keys for business success is to adapt to those changes. So that's why when we talk about this topic for the first time, we did it because it was really important to understand that the world is constantly changing and that we need to be ready to address such issues. So understanding that, changes and how we cope with changes is what, at the end of the day, gives value to project management. And that's what we're gonna talk about today. In this moment, the value of project management and project management as part of the foundations for a culture of innovation. So this author, Orion, he says that the organizations, must become more efficient, more productive. They must do more with less. They must continually innovate. So it's like at the beginning, we were making this contrast between projects and operations, but it doesn't mean that you either do one or the other thing. That's not what we mean. What we mean is that the logics are different and the way that we do both things is different. But what we are trying to say here is that somehow companies should try to work more with projects, let's say. All the companies can do that, actually. All the companies can do that. And as they need to continually innovate and they need to do more with less, using the logics of projects or the projects approach might help them actually do that. So this is the strategic value of project management. First of all, project management provides a controlled way to rapidly respond to changing market conditions and new strategic opportunities. When we are working with projects, we are always responding rapidly to that. Even in the field of education, which is super conservative, we could also do that. So that's one of the good things of using projects, let's say, to always respond to the market conditions and think about new strategic opportunities. That's, for instance, the case of what the British Council has been doing during the last years. The British Council is working more and more on educational technology, basically responding to those market conditions and trying to look for new opportunities. And that's something that is more achievable when we are working with projects. Project management also maximizes the innovative and creative capabilities of the organization by creating environments of focus and open communication. So this is very important. Environments of focus. So when we have a team working on a project, let's say the team that we had last year for the Bucaramanga project. So we had those people working only on that project. So we create an environment in which those people are working only on one single project. So they are focusing on that, and they somehow become experts on what's going on there, and they understand that context because they work only on that project, you see? And open communication has to do with the fact that they are always talking about what's happening. As we said before, we are flexible, so we are looking for the best ways to answer to any sort of problem you may have. It also allows organizations to accomplish more with less costs, because we monitor the budget, we monitor the people's work, so we focus more on what we do, and we are always trying to do more with the same amount of money. Just to show you something crazy, last year, as perhaps you guys heard about that, there was a huge problem with a project that they accepted in La Guajira that was around 11,000 million pesos in La Guajira for bilingualism. 11,000 million pesos, right? And if you check the budget that we have for a project with the Ministry of Education that has a national scale, the project, the money for it might be like 40% of that. So we do way more with the Ministry of Education, with just 40% of the budget, basically, because we focus on what is needed to be done. Of course, in the case of La Guajira, that was a matter of corruption, clearly.
Yeah.
When we work with projects in general terms, we somehow do more with less. This is one of my favorite parts, perhaps. It enables better leverage of both internal and external expertise. What it means is to leverage is like to apalancar, let's say. So if we leverage that, it means that we know that our team has certain skills and capacities, but every time we start a new project, we may perhaps engage someone new. So we may, we open a call for a specific consultant on a certain matter, and we end up learning from that person, you see? So for example, let's say we need to have a technical lead who's an expert on gamification, because, I mean, and that's actually a real case because of this application that we launched these days. So this person comes to work with us during this year, and as he works with us, we leverage our internal expertise, our knowledge with him, because we learn from that person, you see? So as we have dynamic teams, we have different people coming every single year, we are learning from different people all the time, and that's something we need to do. And those people who come also, they learn from the experience of working for the organization. So it's like, this is a win-win relationship, let's say, in which we as project managers learn from the people who help us, the people we hire, let's say, and those people learn from us as an organization. It also provides key information and visibility on project metrics to enable better management and decision making. When you are developing a project, remember that one of the phases is controlling. So you need to use numbers all the time for everything. So you need to define indicators, for example, to measure every single thing you do. So as you measure every single thing you do, and as you have figures, numbers about your work, that's going to help you a lot to make better decisions, basically, because you just don't do something because you feel like doing it, but you control what you do. So for instance, you know, if you are delivering a virtual course, you have metrics on how many people are active in the course, how many people are taking the online sessions, how many people are doing the activities, the grades they have. So with those numbers, you know if the strategy is going well or not, and you can make decisions. So that's something that happens a lot with projects. It also increases the pace and level of the stakeholder acceptance for any strategic change. So when we are working with projects, we work somehow faster. So our stakeholders or the people who work with us, they start to work a little bit faster, let's say, and it becomes easier for them to understand that those changes are important. Because remember, projects have a life cycle. So if we are working with the Ministry of Education, for instance, they know that we are going to do certain activities that we're going to finish in December, and then we will think about new things to do. So we are ready to think about new ways, and we have data, information on what we did, so we can make more decisions about what we should, do later. And it also reduces financial losses by killing off poor project investments early in their life cycles. So this is related to the question that Paula said. So it reduces financial losses because we can identify how we are using the money from the beginning. So if we know that something is cheaper or something, perhaps we have to invest the money in the same project. But next year, when we do a similar project, we say, for instance, you remember last year we assigned 5 million pesos for the course, but we just spent 3. So this year, let's project just 4. So we spend less money on that activity. So you see, working with these cycles helps us somehow kill off these poor investments. So we're about to finish, guys, and I'd like you to reflect upon this question, which is very, very important. And we're gonna use this breakout rooms tool again, so you guys discuss this. And I'd like you to think about yourselves. Today we have talked about what a project is, the parts of a project, the cycles, the skills that we need in a very general way. But now the question would be for us to say, why having a career in project management? I mean, let's start by saying that all of you can be project managers. You can be project managers because there is no, I mean, you don't have to take like an undergraduate program to be a project manager. Any person from any professional field can be a project manager because project management is a cross sectional sort of set of skills. So we actually need project managers in all the fields of work, let's say. So let's start by saying that you guys can be project managers if you want. But the question would be, why having a career in project management? Or why should I know about this? Why? I mean, why is it important to know about project management? And why would I think about having a career in project management, doing something regarding project management? So I'd like you guys to discuss this question for 5 minutes, if that's okay with you. And as I said, we're gonna use the breakout rooms for that activity again. So let me just do that. Okay, here we go. Okay, guys, so great. So I'd like to know if anybody wants to share their insights about the things you guys discussed in the groups. Why having a career in project management? Who wants to say something about that?
Sure. I would like to begin.
Yes, thank you.
We all agree somehow, and this could be life practical, develop soft skills and skills that are beyond university capacities. Like we don't have the chances to review those topics about budget, management, integration, communication. During the university, we have like a theoretical approach, and this would be a practical approach instead.
Okay, great. So yes, definitely, you are pointing out the fact that this is something that would be somehow new for most of us, and that was my case as well. I didn't study anything related to it when I was at the university. So yes, that would somehow open a different learning path. Yes, I totally agree on that. Anybody else wants to say something?
Yes, I would like to say that.
Yeah, we were.
Oh, go ahead. Ladies first.
Okay, so who was going to say something, Daniela or Paula? I don't know.
What? I just got super confused.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so just raise your hand. So I think we can go Daniel, Paula, Felipe.
Okay.
That's okay.
So we were saying that, let's say that developing these skills and being a project manager, it helps you to diversify your profile, and also by doing that you can diversify your income, so you can work on these projects, but at the same time you can develop any other idea that you have. And also I like the life cycle, because something that happens to me all the time is that when you get a job, you get hired there and you start working, and it becomes something repetitive, and you see that you're not actually contributing to solve a problem there. So you want to just quit the job. But in this case, so you're seeing that your activities, what you're developing, cause this, let's say, impact into society. And it can be handled, let's say, for a shorter period of times, which is something that you can, let's say, accept and be able to work there.
Yeah, you mentioned several things we've said before, and that's absolutely true. And that's difference between working, as I said, with projects versus operations. There you go. Like that might be an extra motivation. So we could somehow also say that working in projects is perfect for millennials, I'd say.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, cool. Paula.
Paula, I think she's going.
She just left. Okay, so Felipe.
Okay, so what I think about what having a career in project management, I think this gives us another point of view about what is teaching. We can say or we can do another things in another external point of view than just being a teacher. It does mean that is bad. We first are teachers, but this gives us, as I said before, another point of view, another point of doing the things, or how to have to change the things.
Absolutely, yes. So yeah, but that has to do with a matter of perspective and how you being a teacher can get involved in different roles, which is what we somehow try to say the most since the very beginning. That's why we said we are not teachers, we are licenciados, and that's different. And as a licenciado, you can do lots of different things. You can be a project manager, a technical lead, a consultant, a teacher, a instructional designer. I mean, there are lots of different jobs that we can have, and yeah, that's how that has to do with what Felipe has said. So guys, let's try to wrap up this. So I got some like ideas on the same question. Perhaps we could say that we did a great job if by the end of the session we say, I definitely want to study project management. That would be, let's say, a successful result. So there is a professional value. And by the way, before this question, we were talking about the strategic value of project management for companies. So this is why companies should consider project management. But now with this question, we were saying why we as individuals should consider project management. So one of the things which is important to highlight is that it ensures that our work is put to the best use for the organization and properly recognized. This is exactly what Daniel said. So it's like when we are working in projects, we're not just doing just something because, but we somehow are doing something in which we have the best performance, and also that work is properly recognized. So this is what Daniel said. It's like we are not just doing repetitive actions, but we are doing something that we somehow have special skills for. It also provides a career path that offers unique, challenging opportunities on each new project. So that's perhaps one of the most exciting things with working with projects. We know that every single year we'll do something different. So for example, in my case, at least last year, I had the chance to work on 2 completely different projects. When I was working with the Programa Municipal de Bilingüismo in Bucaramanga and the English for Tourism and Hospitality program in Medellin, those programs were super different. So I had to be very flexible to understand both and to propose different strategies for both. So that was unique, as I said, challenging, and we know that we will have new opportunities every single year. So that's interesting from the view of the career path. It also provides a career path that requires all of our abilities and knowledge, including management, business, people, and technical skills. So as we had a look at this 9 different areas, you know that you need to develop lots of different skills at the same time. So yeah, you need to have this technical knowledge that you acquire in the university. This knowledge that you have on language teaching and learning and education, that is really, really important. But you need to also know how to manage money, communications, people, procurement, you see, lots of different things. So that's something very exciting as well, because you know that you are developing several skills at the same time. It provides a career path that is in high demand and generally an increase in outcome. So this has to do with money itself. So this is a job that is becoming even more and more popular, and more companies require project managers, and the salaries and compensations for these roles are, believe me, very good. In our case, and that's one of the reasons, to be honest, why I stopped dreaming of studying a PhD. I really would like to do a PhD someday. But when I found that being a project manager, I could earn the same salary a doctor would earn, I said, okay, that's interesting, you see? So that's something that happens. So lots of PhD professionals in universities, they earn the same amount of money that a project manager with just a master's degree could earn. So regarding salaries, it's also very attractive. It provides a career path that prepares you for organizational leadership positions. So that's something very important of project management as well. When you study project management, when you develop a career in project management, you are preparing yourself for leadership positions. So there are more and more opportunities to grow professionally, but also to grow in organizations, because project managers are leaders all the time. So as you develop those skills, you have the possibility to continue growing and becoming, let's say, like a better professionals. That's one of my dreams. Actually, would like to be the country director for the British Council someday, somewhere in the world. Why not, right? So I know there is a path. I know it's super hard to get there, but I mean, let's try at least. It also provides a career path that allows you to be on the front lines of the strategic organizational initiatives and have major impact on the organization's future. This is what you guys said also as well, because you're working with people, you're working in the front line, developing new ideas, developing new projects. So it gives you the possibility to transform society somehow, but also to transform the organization for which you are working on. So, I mean, and this is something I feel extremely proud of. In the British Council here in Colombia, I was the first person to use design thinking for anything. And I was the first person to develop a hackathon in our programs. And that's something I feel super proud of, you see? But if I was working in a different context, it would have been way more complicated. It would have been way harder. But that's something that projects allow you to do. Flexibility allows you to do that. So when I presented those 2 ideas, they accepted the ideas and we did it. And it was really, really interesting. So being a project manager or working in projects allows you to be on the front lines, like creating new things, innovating all the time. So guys, that's essentially what I wanted to share today. There is another little part that I wanted to share today, but time is off basically. And that has to do with, you know, I wanted to answer the question, why projects are hard or why projects are challenging. But that's how we're gonna start the next session. If we say, as you can see here, guys, it was a very super brief and superficial introduction to this, and still there is lots of information. So that means that projects are challenging somehow, and that's something we're gonna discuss in the next session. There is a reading that I like to suggest, which is this. The book is called Your Successful Project Management Career. So I selected this book because this book talks directly to the people who want to be, you know, have a career in project management. So it would be really interesting to have a look at it. So I would suggest reading the chapter number 1, which is called Understanding What Project Management is All About. So you might find, and you will find, slightly different definitions there. So for instance, when they talk about the phases or cycles, they might be a little bit different. But as I told you, this is something which is normal to find different definitions. But the official definitions I share with you today come from the Project Management Institute, which is like the standard. So that's something you might have to somehow compare. It's a very brief reading. It's just from the pages 3 to the page, from the page 3 to 11. So it's a quite brief reading. I'm gonna show you how that book looks. I've got it over here. So it's a very cool, easy to read book. So as you can see, it's not a big deal. You will read a little bit more about the project and program stages, which is a little bit different, as I said, and the different phases, again, a little bit different. But perhaps the part I find the most interesting is this, about who the project manager is. So that's somehow the part that I'd like you to read the most about, who the project manager is. So I'd like you to read about that. You'll see here some ideas on the skills project managers should have as well. So that's, and the path to success to be a really good project manager, and deciding if project management is for you. You see, so that's why I selected this chapter, because I believe it's super interesting to have this personal, let's say, set of questions somehow. If you want to have a look at the materials, you can find them here. It's in the folder that we already have. You can enter like here. Like for instance, we are here in the folder Observatorio Command. You just click on Formación. I'm gonna just expand a little bit. Here, Formación. Then you enter Project Management, Crash Course 2020, and you'll find presentations and references. In the presentations, you will find these slides I share with you today, references. I will be sharing with you different books and stuff. Here's the book I am suggesting for today. For next week, I'm sorry. It's not just for today. It's like, take it easy. You don't have to read everything today. So guys, once again, thank you very much. I don't know you guys, but I really make the most of this time, and I sort of enjoy talking about this little part of my life, this little thing I still want to understand, you see, because I'm just a teacher playing to be a manager. But this is something I believe is worth, considering for our professional careers. And as I said, this is something that I've been doing just for like 3 years already. And there's still lots of things to learn, but it's something really interesting. Just if we think about this value for professional development, I think there are different things different aspects that that should be considered regarding our professional future, and how we could advance our careers and become better professionals and learn to solve real problems and create interesting, cool solutions for problems real people are having. Okay. So I don't know if you want to say something like I don't know, whatever sort of complaint, you see, requests, whatever, before we finish.
It was really clear, I guess.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to share with us this knowledge you have. Your expertise for us is going to help us a lot to build different projects, and also to keep working with the ELT Observatory.
Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes.
Can we share this?
Yeah.
I mean, can we share this in our somehow
What?
in the observatory pages?
Well, you know what? So far, I think we shouldn't. So far, and that's something we should perhaps discuss later, because it's like we should think about first why we should do that and what could be the risks. You see, so that's something we need to think. So far, I will upload these videos just for our reference, but later we could explore if we can share these recordings and so on.
Okay, great.
Of course, if you share these recordings with friends of yours or with someone close, that's absolutely okay. But like to broadcast it, like to share it for anyone, it's a little bit different. That's something we should discuss later. That's okay.
All right.
Okay, guys. So once again, thank you very much, and
Thank you,
I'll
teacher.
see you next Saturday.
All right, see you. Take care.
See you.
Bye.
Have a nice night,
See you,
guys.
take care.
Have a nice day.
Bye.